Boker Tov. Good morning as we join together. All right. Time to get things together. How's everybody doing this morning? I hope you're feeling okay. Hope you got some rest. Easier said than done sometimes. I actually feel more rested today than I have in a day or two, which is nice. And let's see if there are various opportunities to connect to our friends on Facebook work. They seem to be. May 15th, what a day. At least the 21st of ER. So many ways to name a day. Boker Tov, everyone. It's wonderful to see and hear everybody. Well, Boker Tov and good morning from Temple Sinai of Toronto, and welcome to our daily Sinai streams, offering a Boker Tov moment, an opportunity for us to connect, to reflect, and to remember. And doing so today is, I don't know, it's wonderful and a challenge all the same. Allow me to explain. We're going to take a moment now and share some of one of our prayers that thanks the divine for our reality, for our physical and spiritual selves, for the amazing combination that is the human being, the human existence, the gift that we are. Excuse me. And I have to admit this morning that I'm a little challenged sharing the English here, because when I created this particular translation, I chose to use in the second line the word network. I have to tell you this morning, I've already spent a lot of energy and a lot of time being stressed about networks. Just getting us together this morning, getting here this morning, was much more complicated than it is most days, but that's how things go. And it really put me in a particular frame of mind. On the one hand, this morning, I was quite stressed at various devices and settings and modems and history caches, and who can imagine these various things? And I did find it challenging to go through a checklist to make sure that we'd be able to share this time together. On the other hand, as things finally started to resolve, I did manage to take a breath and say, wow, where would I be and how would I feel grounded, connected, at home in the world without the opportunities created by these stress-inducing devices. And so this morning, I'm grateful for all the networks. I'm grateful for the amazing network that is my and your body and soul. That works so beautifully when it works, and that we strive to correct and strengthen when it doesn't. And I'm grateful for all of these other amazing technologically human-created networks that somehow allow us to feel a sense of unity, even in a world that seems so isolated and separated. And so these words feel really even more meaningful today. And so please feel free to join me in this prayer acknowledging the wonder of being. Blessed eternal God, creator of the universe, you have fashioned our bodies with wisdom creating within us a finely balanced network. To stand before you in prayer is itself a fragile miracle. Eternal God, we praise you as the healer of body and spirit. And as we do now, we turn to the wonder of the mind, the ability for us to focus. That's really what's required in order to learn Torah, to create any kind of learning, which in itself creates Torah. And the challenge not only to learn, but ha'arevna, to make it pleasant, to make it sweet. So as we learn, not just in the few next moments together, but as we seek out moments of learning throughout our day, let's see today if we can also make those moments sweet and appreciate the goodness in them as we join in them. Now, please feel free to join with me in the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. V'ha'arevna Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'finu v'b'fi amcha be'Yisrael. V'niyeh anachnu b'tze'etze'enu b'tze'etze'e amcha be'Yisrael. Kulanu yodei shemecha v'lomdei Toratecha lishma. Baruch atah Adonai, hamlamed Torah le'amo Yisrael. May these moments and these days and these opportunities be sweet to us as we gather this Friday morning. And as we consider, as we do often on these Fridays, a little wider perspective on what's going on in the world. And today, something has finally happened, is finally happening in the state of Israel. That once upon a time, I think we took for granted, and that over the last year, through 3 elections, we really have learned not to take for granted. But I want to reflect a little bit on the new Israeli government that's coming into being just today, after so much time, so much effort, so much expenditure of money, such a change in the world, where when Israel started choosing a new government, just like when our country most recently chose a government, nobody could have imagined the kind of reality that we would be facing now, and the changes and the destruction that COVID would bring to people's lives, to the economy, which is kind of a nice abstraction for people's lives. It's interesting for me to reflect on what's happening there, because the new Israeli government that's coming in is coming in supposedly as a national emergency government, as one to allow the country to continue to deal with what's taking place in reopening the economy and in dealing with any additional outcomes of them having really lowered the incidence of COVID-19 in their state. But I look at a number of things that are really difficult to watch. One of those is that this is the largest Israeli government ever, where they're left and right making up ministries so that they have small ministries to give to small ministers. That's really the way it appears, that it's amazing how leadership, politics as it is supposed to be, the last I checked, is about service. It's about providing for people, providing for society, about looking not only at people's day-to-day security and realities, which is so important, but also trying to look at least just a little bit ahead and say, how can we as a collective look out for one another? I think that's what government is supposed to be everywhere. How much today, especially with the pressures of a crisis time, to me, that's when even more such figures ought to be thinking about those that they serve, about those who chose them to be their representatives, to be there for them. Whereas in Israel, this government doesn't look that way at all. The largest number of ministers doesn't just mean that some politicians can say that they were a minister in a government. It means it will be the most expensive government in the history of the country. That at a time where fully a quarter of the country is off of work, the politicians have chosen to create jobs for themselves. And in doing so, to create a government that is also a bit of a hash, that is a mixture of people and of parties and of agendas that don't in any natural way go together. They seem to go together enough to create a government. But as was said by an Israeli commentator I was reading this morning, first they're going to get married and then they're going to try to figure out whether they can love each other or not. The government's ability to function is a worry. Now, maybe that's a worry every day for Israelis more than the Jewish people around the world. And yet, at the same time, what kind of compromises have been made in this government? Well, two different directions seem to be underfoot, both of which I find enormously concerning. One of them is the talk of a unilateral annexation of the settlements in the West Bank. It seems to me that the word unilateral has proven historically to create awful and frightening situations. The right wing of Israeli politics that's so for annexation is so against the unilateral pullout from Gaza. And I'm not so sure the problem was the pullout as much as the unilateral. And so the same people who opposed that unilateral action and its painful, unfortunate outcomes seem to be in favor of certain directions here that certainly could result in painful, unfortunate outcomes. Israel has been so successful under Prime Minister Netanyahu in making connections with countries in the world bilaterally with whom Israel had no connections. And now this move, which is highly questionable in a number of areas, is certainly a major threat to that, as well as a threat to connections, to a sense of unity among the Jewish people throughout the world. So many, myself included, are terribly worried about damage that will be done to the democratic character of the Jewish state of Israel that is so important to me and so important to many. And at the same time, in making agreements in order to create this government, there's been a guarantee given with the involvement of the ultra-Orthodox parties that there will be in the next 18 months no progress of any kind on issues of religion and state that have been a thorn in the side of the worldwide Jewish community for the last number of years. So watching, this may be a little technical for some today, talking about internal Israeli politics, but that's not really how it strikes me. It goes back to the things that I talked about as we began our gathering this morning. The awareness that we're all part of a network, that we can't exist just by ourselves, that a government does not exist if it doesn't focus on the people whom it serves, that a country doesn't exist only within its own borders, but affects others who are not citizens and others who feel a sense of connection and ownership, especially when we talk about the project, the amazing, wonderful Zionist project that is the land of Israel. And that we need to find what the ball is and keep our eye on it. A number of these evolutions sound to be somewhat negative, and they are, but at the same time, I also read this morning that for the first time that in its meetings, the European Union, the EU, made a clear and unequivocal statement that none of the funding that it provides to developing societies around the world can be used to support curricula and educational materials that promote hatred, extremism, xenophobia, fundamentalism. That in fact, in that statement, the European Union made a specific statement acknowledging the anti-Semitism and the danger of many of the educational materials that are used in Palestinian society that, in my mind, are one of the key elements that's preventing any kind of progress toward a long-term agreement, settlement, understanding that two peoples in that area so desperately need. And so at least this morning, it was positive to see that all this work that's been done over the last number of years to share and to explain and to teach about the importance of the kind of education that each of us receives is taking root. I only hope that this new balagan, this new chaos of a government and its desires and directions doesn't take something that could in fact be a meaningful and lasting opportunity for progress for all, and make a mess out of it because of a desire to not to follow a vision, but to live out a number of individual political agendas that in fact often contradict one another. Politics in our world is quite chaotic and quite amazing, and it makes me wonder as well as we enter what normally would feel for most like a long weekend, but that will feel, I'm not sure, so different this upcoming weekend. We wonder as things begin to open up here in Canada that we need to keep on our orientation, our thinking caps, our ability to say, are we serving one another? Is what the government is doing something that has us in mind in many ways? I found that there may be some efforts in that direction, but at the same time, we have to not only look out for ourselves and for our families, we have to model for politicians what it is that makes a society, and a democratic society in particular, so valuable and so important. We have to model looking out for one another. And so I hope that we can take any opportunities we have to do that, to reach out to those who are isolated or in need, to let them know that we're there for them, and that we all share this amazing world and that we care. One of the ways we do that is by sharing our prayer for those in need of strength and healing, and both for those who are isolated, those facing illness, COVID-19 or any illness, and those who are on all the different frontline locations that help us continue to make our way through this challenging time. And so this prayer is shared for all of those and all in need of healing. אימותינו שרה רבקה לאה ורחל, הוא ירפא את כל מכותינו. יהי רצון מלפניך אדוני אלוהינו, לחל עמם ולרפאותם, וישלח לנו מהרה רפואה שלמה ועטרת שלום, ונאמר Amen. May the one who blessed our ancestors bless and heal all who suffer. May it be the divine will to provide healing and strength. Reveal to us the holiness of life, the wholeness of shalom, and together we say, Amen. And so now, as we've taken a bit of time to reflect, we now take some moments to remember, recalling those in our circle of friends, family, our community who have died in recent days and weeks in the last 30 days. We remember Ruth Kelman, Marcia Mason, Pauline Milrad, Ovid Benari, Andrew Kosman, Paula Rich, Susie Mate Veda. And we remember all victims of terror and violence, including the 22 victims of the mass shooting in Nova Scotia almost a month ago, and Amit Ben Yigal, whose life was taken in Israel just days ago. We also are sad to report the death of Cheryl Okorovsky. Our member, we're so sorry about her tragic death and for the loss for her family. Arrangements are being made through Benjamin's. And on your site on this day, on the 21st day of the month of Iyar, the 15th day of May in this particular year, we remember Evelyn Chelsea, Jack Kornblum, Samuel Reuben Kornblum, Rosalind Feinberg, Howard Gardner, Arthur J. Hirscheren, Mortimer Obrant, Stanley Francis Paulin, Harry Rubenstein, Hyman Seligman, Morris Schatz, Joseph David Simmons, Meyer Singer, Clara Sujatsky, Itzalel Urson, Irving Wunsch, Clara Young. Zichronam Livracha, may their memories be a blessing to us. Our griefs and our sympathies are mingled as together we turn to words sanctified by memory, words glorified by hope in the Kaddish Yatom. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabba, ve'alma divarach irutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, v'agala ubizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehe shmei rabba mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudisha b'reichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, v'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and bring comfort and strength to all who remember. And together we say, Amen. Well, Boker Tov, make it a great day, and Shabbat Shalom as well. Looking forward, hopefully, to have you join with us as we mark Shabbat. Tonight at 6:30 is our Kabbalat Shabbat service, and tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., our Shabbat morning service, followed by our continuing Omer period study sessions at 11:30 a.m. Boker Tov. Make it a wonderful, connected kind of a day.